Yo, what is good, Rant Team? I'm RJ West, and this morning I woke up with the feeling that I just needed to make a video on the Utah Jazz because despite the fact that they are going to win the Northwest Division, despite the fact that they have a top 4 seed, despite the fact that Gordon Hayward and Rudy Gobert are putting up all-star numbers, and Gordon Hayward even putting up superstar numbers, borderline superstar numbers, nobody seems to be talking about the Utah Jazz. And so, as you guys know, I am a Warrior fan, and as a Warrior fan, I see only few teams that scare me, and this is one of the few teams that actually scare me because during the season, the Jazz have lost to the Warriors both times, but in both of those games, one of them, they didn't have Gordon Hayward, but they also didn't have George Hill or Derek Favors, and this team just operates better with George Hill since he's a pretty underrated point guard. We'll get to him a little bit later, but in the second matchup, they had Gordon Hayward, but they still didn't have George Hill, nor did they have Derek Favors. And also, they went on the road to Golden State. They went down to Oracle, which is never an easy task for any NBA team, depending on whether the Warriors are good or not. And so, when it comes to the Jazz, home court advantage is what matters a lot. I mean, it matters a lot for any team, but if this team has home court advantage, they have an advantage in the series over others, because playing at Energy Solutions Arena, I'm not sure if it's still called that, but playing there is not an easy task for any team, depending on whether the Jazz are good or not. And so, when it comes to the Jazz, this team is pretty good. They're very good defensively, and well, despite the fact that they are doing a lot of great things, nobody seems to be talking about them. Everybody's all over the Warriors. I mean, we already knew that was going to come. People are over the Spurs because saying that, well, they could potentially beat the Warriors or potentially win the title. People are all over the Celtics because they just jumped Cleveland, only half a game ahead, but they still jumped Cleveland ahead of the Eastern Conference standings. And people are on Cleveland because there's a lot of question marks about if they will repeat. You know, there's a lot of teams that people are talking about. Even James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, and LeBron James at 4-player MVP race. And so, because of that, the Jazz get lost in the shuffle in basically every conversation that I see. I don't see anybody talking about the Jazz. It's just really, really not coming. I don't understand why people aren't talking about this team. I mean, when fully healthy, this team is very good, and even since they haven't been completely healthy this season, they still have a top 4 seed, which, I mean, that's not as easy of a task. They jumped the Clippers, they are jumping the Thunder without Kevin Durant, but still, and this team is just not being talked about. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so, when you take a look at George Hill, he's been banged up this whole season, and when he's on the court, it really benefits them better because he's a good defender, he's a solid playmaker, he can play off the ball if he has to, but he's a good facilitator mostly, and this team runs just better with their point guard at the helm and just running the offense, running the defense even, calling out signals. They just really benefit more with George Hill. And Derek Favors also, he's been banged up this year. When he's in the lineup, he is a guy that is pretty athletic for the power forward position. He's also a good rebounder, he's a good defender, and he has the ability, he's only averaged like 9 points per game when he's in the lineup, but he's efficient while doing so. He's just a key cog to this Jazz team. He's more of a key cog rather than, I would say, a big time, I don't know, star. Yeah, no, he's not necessarily an all-star, but he's still a key cog, just like George Hill. I'd say George Hill might be a little bit better, just have a better role. But still, anyway, that's not really the point. I digress a little bit. We talk about Gordon Hayward. When we talk about all-stars, borderline superstars, I don't see Gordon Hayward in the conversation that much at all, if at all. I mean, Mike Korzemba posted a video showing all the underrated players, and then Gordon Hayward and Rudy Gobert were both in them. We'll talk about Rudy Gobert a bit later, but Gordon Hayward has been posting all-star numbers. He's an all-star this year, but he's been posting borderline superstar numbers at the small forward position, more so the wing position, as he's currently averaging like 22 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 assists if you average it out. And he's also doing this on 46.5% shooting from the field. So he's efficient and he knows how to, he's just one of those do-it-all type of small forwards. And also his defensive ability has gotten very better as he's progressed along his career. He's now able to stay in front of some guards, and he's also able to bang down low with some small forwards. So Gordon Hayward is the real deal, and it doesn't seem that a lot of people are talking about him. And so the other player that's pretty underrated is Rudy Gobert. I mean, he's 24 years old. He was traded by the Nuggets in the draft. It was a draft day trade. And he's really progressed into one of the best rim protectors, and he could be a contender for the Defensive Player of the Year award. Now, it's hard to top Kawhi Leonard, but Rudy Gobert is just, he's got a lot of good, he's tops in defensive win shares, you know, all defensive stats, all that, and he's just one of the better rim protectors in the NBA. And also the Jazz are one of the better defensive teams in the NBA, which is a big part of why they are winning. They're one of the better defensive teams, and Rudy Gobert is one of the better defensive players in the NBA. And it seems like nobody seems to talk about him. I mean, people know about DeAndre Jordan, but they're not knowing about Rudy Gobert enough. Rudy Gobert, he's a guy that could win Defensive Player of the Year. I can see him winning it in some scenarios, and it doesn't seem like anybody's talking about him. I mean, they're all over all the other players, all the other big name teams, you know, they're talking, even the Spurs are getting more talk, which, I mean, that makes sense, but, like, people talk about how they can be underappreciated because, well, they're a small market in San Antonio, and they don't really do anything celebrating unless they win the title, but, I mean, nobody seems to be talking about the Utah Jazz either. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And so, because of this, I made this video, and I look at this, and I see that I might have over-exaggerated in the title a bit, simply because the Jazz haven't won either of the matchups against the Warriors, but they will be playing the Warriors for their final game of the season. And, if I'm not mistaken, I'm actually going to check right now. They're also playing San Antonio on Sunday. I mean, by the time this video goes up, they would have already played San Antonio. But yeah, they're playing the Warriors, their second to last game in Golden State, which isn't going to be easy. But people aren't talking about this Jazz team enough. And this is a team that I would have beating the Clippers in the first round of the playoffs. And I wouldn't predict it. I wouldn't predict them beating the Warriors, but this is a team, this is one of the few teams that can actually challenge the Warriors and actually beat them because they have what they need. They have a defensive team, they have a team that has a bunch of players that can play together, and they just know how to win. They're figuring out how to win now. They're most likely going to make the playoffs. I mean, they already clinched a playoff spot. And so, like, people aren't talking about the Jazz, and they could even push a team like the Warriors to 6 or 7 games. If they're fully healthy, I can see it. And so, I can go on and off. I would say that I over-exaggerated a bit in the title, but you still need to pay attention to the Utah Jazz because this team is the real deal, and if they're healthy, you gotta look out for this team because they might surprise you, and they pretty much snuck up on a lot of people. A lot of people didn't see the Jazz coming, and before the season, I kind of saw it, but nobody really saw it aside from maybe Mike Crozemba. So anyways, I have been RJ West, your official voice of the A Miles Network, and I am saying so long, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and don't make sure not to take the title too seriously, and I'll leave it at this. Look out for the Utah Jazz, they might surprise you.